With the 28th pick in the 2023 NHL Draft, the Toronto Maple Leafs have selected Easton Cowan, a right wing out of London. Gil Martin here alongside our prospects expert, Hadi Kalakeche, and we are joined by David Morassutti of Locked On Leafs to talk about this selection. David, were you surprised by the selection of Easton Cowan at 28?
Very surprised, just because you look at all the boards, all of the pre-scouts, all the mock drafts, not a single one had him in the first round. So definitely came as a big surprise, and probably the biggest surprise knowing that the guy wasn't even like, he came from all the way near the top of the rafters just to come down to get his jersey. So this was definitely an out of the box pick for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Not really one you see too often, but it is not one that's uncommon for Brad Treliving, I will say.
And why do you think it was so far out of the box? What were they looking for in this pick?
Everyone would know 2 picks earlier, the San Jose Sharks took Quinn Musty, who was the one that every Leafs fan had their eye on. And it just feels like, when that pick happened, Brad Treliving was on the phone. And when a GM's on the phone, he's probably trying to conjure up some sort of deal, because if a player like that gets picked, maybe he's trying to trade down because the player he wants doesn't necessarily need to go at 28 overall. Maybe that's kind of where the Leafs were in that situation. But I also think that Wes Clark, the person who is running the draft for the Leafs, this was clearly his pick. He wanted him, and it's going to be a project. The Leafs. It's funny because the Leafs are in a win now mode. So to take a player who is probably going to be a little more of a project down the road, it's a little surprising. But I just feel like they did the best of what the option was there for them. They went with their draft board. They went with a guy that they had a lot of belief in. So now we kind of have to wait and see how it all shakes out.
So, Hadi, what are they getting in Easton Cowan?
I mean, Cowan's playmaking is honestly unfair. It's so good. And it's just the vision. It's the vision, the anticipation. He reads teammates' routes really well. He can play pucks under sticks or between legs really well. There's just outside of that I'm kind of curious as to what he can add to his game, because he's kind of slow in terms of his skating stride. He does have great motor, great intensity and effort level, though. His motor's high end. So in terms of what you're getting a decent forechecker with a really specified skill set in terms of playmaking. He was 57th on my board, personally, just because he doesn't have much of a shot. You can't rely on him to score, 20 goals at the NHL level. I'd be very, very surprised. Defensively, he's hit or miss in terms of his backchecking ability because of that lack of skating. Defending off the rush is really hard for him. He struggles to get back on time. But really, honestly, just the fact that he's got a decent motor, it gives him a decent-ish baseline, and the playmaking being as high-end as it is, maybe the Leafs are thinking we can build around this, and we can make a player that, we can work on his shot, we can improve his skating. We know very well that the Leafs are good at improving skating in players. They've got Barb Underhill working for them as a consultant, so maybe we're thinking, let's just give Cowan to Barb Underhill and let her work her magic, and we'll see where it goes, because I can only imagine what Cowan would do with high-end skating. And I believe that, if they're able to make an elite skater out of Cowan, he could very well be worth a pick at 28 and even higher.
David, what are your thoughts on the direction of this team so far this offseason?
Yeah, it seems like, it was all pegged about the big offseason change coming for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And the first move that Brad Treliving makes was to bring back a player that some didn't expect to be back in David Kampf. They signed him to that 4-year deal. A lot of people see that as, the 2.4 million AAV being a little rich for a player like David Kampf, who isn't viewed as, a high-level offensive center. He's very much a defensive center. So there's a lot of people wondering if this is just, the Leafs are going to be bringing the band back together again, and that big change that might have been promised might not happen. I'm still waiting to see approach, because the Leafs do have quite a few free agents, especially with their forwards. I feel like there are going to be changes. It's just I don't expect those changes to happen without somebody being shipped out. Somebody has to move because they don't have a lot of cap space. And they can make some wiggle room by putting Jake Muzz on LTIR. Other than that, there's not a lot of maneuverability. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what direction Brad Treliving goes here.
All right. Well, for more on this selection and all things Toronto Maple Leafs during the draft and free agency, tune in to Locked On Leafs for free on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.